weigh in.
Inflation continued to trend down for the third straight month in April. Despite this, experts are still wary of the looming El Nino, which could dampen the economy. We'll discuss this some more with Pamantasan Lungsod ng Manila President Emmanuel Leco later on in the program.
And learnings put to good use. This Cebuana nursing student has become a trending topic on social media after she helped a man on the street who was suffering from heat stroke.
The hero of this heartwarming story, Julia Baguio, will be joining us later in the show to tell us more about her experience.
Welcome to the show. I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Sean Yao.
Well, Sean, it's a Friday.
It's a Friday and tapos na rin yung trip ni PBBM to the United States. His official visit, papunta na siya ngayon sa UK.
Well, there has been quite a discussion among analysts on the new guidelines in the country's mutual defense treaty with the United States. Is this one-sided? Will this really be beneficial for us? Or will this actually drag the Philippines into a conflict with China and what's happening with Taiwan and on that part of the world? Well, President Bongbong Marcos insists that U.S. access to Philippine bases are not meant for offensive action.
That's right. However, as expected, China sounded off saying that mutual defense treaties could be used to meddle in its territorial rights. Let's hear it from Arian Calumbiran.
The United States has never said that this is a possibility, and we have also made it clear from our end that we will. This is not the purpose of those sites. The United States will use the EDCA sites as staging areas for any offensive action against any country.
This was President Bongbong Marcos' categorical response when asked if the United States had asked for the help of Filipino troops should tension between the U.S. and China escalate along the Taiwan Strait. President Marcos spoke at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington to clarify the purpose of having additional EDCA sites.
The EDCA sites were meant to be conceptualized really to be the places that we could use so as to be able to provide quicker relief, quicker rescue, do a better job, in other words, of rehabilitating and reconstructing the damage that will be caused by these disasters. That's really the basic premise of the EDCA sites.
But while the U.S. and the Philippines warm up under the Marcos administration, China is voicing its opposition. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said they are firmly against any country's use of bilateral treaties to interfere with China's territorial and maritime rights. To avoid conflict, President Marcos is now seeking a direct line to Chinese President Xi Jinping.
I suggested that we institute a system wherein we have a direct contact, one president to the other. If I cannot speak, for example, to President Xi himself, I have someone that I can pick up the phone and call who I know and I have confidence in making my message arrive to the president. And this works, of course, both ways.
Despite the strong words from China, President Marcos believes that they're not intended for the Philippines.
So I think that kind of statement was directed more towards the United States than it was for the Philippines.
Meanwhile, the bilateral defense guidelines signed by the Philippines and U.S. are still not part of the Mutual Defense Treaty.
We're not yet there. What we did in this trip and what we have managed to formulate are the guidelines pa lang doon sa mga magiging provision at saka magiging detalye.
Apart from major developments in defense cooperation, Marcos Jr.'s visit to Washington yielded around $1.3 billion in investment pledges for the Philippines. He is set to fly out to the United Kingdom for the coronation of King Charles III before heading back home in the Philippines on May 6.
Now, for two security experts, Raj, the Mutual Defense Treaty would not be much of a use for the Philippines in cases of territorial conflict with China. Speaking to One News's The Chiefs, defense analyst Romel Banlawi said that the MDT cannot be invoked unless there is a direct attack from China. Banlawi also believes that the treaty could be more useful in modernizing the AFP.
We cannot use it unless we are directly attacked militarily by China. And China has no intention to attack us militarily. We want to use our alliance with the United States to modernize our armed forces. So that's our intention.
Former National Security Advisor Clarita Carlos also believes that all these promising defense commitments from the U.S. mean nothing unless they are officially written into the treaty. Carlos says it's also best to come up with sub-implementing rules for EDCA to avoid any misalignments.
Kaya nga palagi siyang sinasabi, dapat magkaroon siya ng sub-IRR kasi magkakagulo na naman sa operational definitions. Yan, Ireland, sinasabi ni Austin, if it is not found in the Mutual Defense Treaty, laway lang yan.
Habang walang kontrata, wala tayong panghahawakan, di ba?
Wala talaga. Hindi pa pala nakasama eh. Guidelines pa lang, I think, for the drafting. Pero kagabi nga, no, Gretch, wala ka dito, pero kasama namin si One News Defense Editor, Manny Mogato. I think it was Chicky who asked him, who benefits more ba from this agreement, the MDT, the EDCA, US ba or Philippines? Unequivocally, he said, syempre US. And so,
we have yet to see, alam mo naman tayo, medyo dehado tayo pagdating sa military defense. I mean, we're a very, very small country with China being a powerhouse in that area. But there are several things that the US and the Philippines have agreed upon, specifically increased tempo in the South China Sea with joint patrols, intelligence sharing to avoid, incidents like the gray zone tactics that we've seen in the past months. Meron din to swiftly
Pasalubong
operationalize
din.
yung
Yes.
4 new EDCA sites. Pero gaya na sabi mo, tama ka, this might drag us into the Taiwan conflict. Ang tanong, no, kasi kung tayo tinamaan, ni-defend nila tayo, pero pag sila nagkaroon ng gera doon,
pwede rin nila tayong tawagin, di ba? Pero ang sabi nga ni President Marcos, hindi naman tayo mag-go to war. Another thing there is that the President cannot by himself decide, tara, gera tayo, go. Hindi, kailangan i-approve muna ng Congress. Same goes with the United States. Also, how scary is the thought na, oh my gosh, pag nag-away yung US and China, Gretchen, di ba parang World War?
we are
Grande na
on
yun.
the brink of that, no? And,
Hopefully not.
Because, it feels so close to us now that we've identified areas where these EDCA sites are, mga taga-Cagayan. Siyempre, it might cause a little bit of a scare in those areas. But this is a developing thing. Again, sabi nga ni President Marcos at saka ni Clarita Carlos, habang wala tayong pinanghahawakan, di ba?
Wala pa naman.
Laway-laway
Wala pa
lang.
naman.
Oo. Okay. Let's talk about inflation this time. 6.6% in April, still high, but a big relief for consumers amid rising prices. Data from the PSA showed inflation was slower last month than the 7.6% posted in March. April's inflation rate is within the 6.3 to 7.1% forecast range of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas for the month. National statistician Dennis Mapa said food and non-alcoholic beverages were the major contributor in lowering inflation last month. The dip in fuel prices, housing rentals, electricity, and water rates likewise helped tame inflation.
Na-feel mo ba, Gretch, na bumaba yung inflation? For now, hindi pa natin masyado.
Kaya yun,
talaga.
nagpa-full tank ako, nasa 50 plus na yung presyo ng gasolina.
So, masaya ka doon.
Medyo malayo dati. Ang full tank ko 4,000 plus, 4,500. Ngayon, it's 3,100. So, huge difference.
Huge
For
difference.
sure.
Okay, so yun na nga yung lower transportation costs na sinasabi nila. Yun lang, no? Magtutuloy-tuloy pa ba to? Or posible pa siyang tumaas? I mean, may El Nino pa tayong parating.
Tama ka dyan. Pinag-uusapan din natin, we just talked about the factors of why inflation, went down. We talked about food, we talked about electricity and water. Lahat yan, nakadikit sa El Nino. Maaaring maapektuhan. Right, but here's the thing, Sean, when asked if the downtrend will continue in the coming months, Mapa said the looming El Nino, as we mentioned, might affect food commodities, one of which is the price of rice. This also happened during the last El Nino in 2018 to 2019, where inflation in rice reached up to 12%.
Yung rice natin noong 2018, talagang mataas yun. In fact, yun ang major contributor natin dun sa inflation rate. Right now, it is still low relative to, but of course, as I mentioned, we are seeing continuous movement dito sa retail price, although maliit yung incremental increases.
Okay, let's discuss the country's April inflation rate some more, as well as how this will interact with the looming El Nino with economist and pamantasang lungsod ng Maynila President Emmanuel Leco. Good evening and welcome to this big story, Professor. Professor, should we worry about how this El Nino can impact us when we actually import most of our basic food items anyways?
Oh, of course. The weather is a major factor in our agricultural products and agricultural supply. And therefore, if there is any major disruption due to the weather, there could be major shifts in prices in the country. So right now, indeed, 6.6% inflation throughout the country is a good development. But I don't think we can rest easy that inflation will already be on its way down.
Okay, how big of a rise do we see in the coming months in terms of inflation? Do we expect a rise?
Well, rice is a major factor. It's a major, it carries a lot of weight in the inflation index, and therefore if moves a peso, 2 pesos, there will be a major price increase here. And not only that, the food prices, the food inflation is a major concern, but the inflation in other regions other than the National Capital Region remain high. For example, in Mimaropa, it's 7.8. Western Visayas is still 8.2%. In Davao, it's 7.5%. So there is uneven projections or uneven inflation when it comes to the different regions. And also, if we take into consideration the income groups, those in the minimum wage groups, they are feeling the burden of inflation. Their wages do not increase, and their major purchases go to food, and therefore, if food inflation is high, we're not talking about 6.6%. We're talking about upwards of 8%, 9% inflation, because that's where most of their purchases go. And therefore, the relevant price index would be those for the food inflation.
Right. Professor, you said it yourself. The weather will impact everyone. And of course, El Nino will not just be impacting us here in the Philippines. It could also impact the weather patterns from those countries, those food producers that we import from. Having said that, what tools are available to the government? So yung interplay nung tools ng gobyerno, sir, at saka nung looming El Nino, meron ba tayong magagawa as a preemptive strike before dumating yung El Nino to prepare for that?
El Nino cannot be stopped, but I think we can already start beefing up our buffer stock and also coming up with forward contracts where we can import or where we can source our food supply. So right now, I think we should be more forward-looking and identify areas where prices are more stable or may not be affected by weather changes or climate risks. So we should already approach them. In other words, today is a good opportunity. Prices are not exactly that high. We can already start looking at beefing up our buffer stock to make sure that we have enough when El Nino hits us.
That's good advice for sure, even for households. Let's go to the meeting, a bilateral meeting of the Philippines with the United States. President Marcos said that $1.3 billion in terms of investment pledges were secured during this visit. What do you think about this? Will this really help our country? Is this really substantial when we talk about pledges? Natutuloy po ba talaga mga ito?
Well, hopefully, but I think from experience, we really don't have a lot of good experiences where pledges turn into real investments. Because the U.S. has always been welcome to invest in the Philippines. So why now? Why do we expect that there will be more investments now than before? Not just because we're opening up our military installations to the U.S., does it mean that the opportunities for the economy will become better? I'm not sure. I think, what we have been saying before, trade is about what we have to offer the international market. If we don't have any competitive products, we cannot expect that our trade will get better just because we have a new agreement with another country.
All right, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Pamantasan ng lungsod ng Maynila, President Emmanuel Leyco. Thanks, Professor.
Up next, we will be speaking with the Cebuana student nurse who helped save a man suffering from heat stroke. Find out more about her when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching the big story here on One News. A little act of kindness could go a long way. This is what a nursing student from Cebu said after she went viral for helping a stranger on the street who was suffering from heat stroke. 21-year-old Julia Baguio was photographed helping a man who reportedly collapsed from heat stroke in Barangay Paho, Lapu-Lapu City on April 28. Photos of what netizens described as a heroic act made rounds on social media this week, with many admiring Julia's empathy and compassion. On Facebook, Julia thanked those who appreciated her act of kindness, but noted that it's something we are all supposed to do. Julia hopes that her experience will also inspire others to help those in need.
All right, Gretch, we actually have a hero here on our show tonight. Julia Baguio is actually joining us here to tell us more about this experience of hers. Julia, hi, welcome to the big story. Tell us what happened that day, where were you, and what happened to the man? Paano mo siya napansin? Can you describe kung gaano kainit nga ba dyan sa may Lapu-Lapu City on that day?
So, first of all, good evening, Miss Gretchen and Miss Sean. So, yung araw po talaga noon ay napakainit po talaga. Parang hindi ko ma-describe. Pero dahil nga po, galing kami noon na nagpa-haircut ng boyfriend ko at papauwi na po kami nung araw na yon bago na yung insidente. So, we were like just walking by and then tapos nun is nadatnan ko po siya talaga na nag-aatake. It is not because of stroke, but the heat might be the reason or one of the factor that the said attack happened po. And then the first thing that we did was, I believe in 3 processes in medical school, which is ABC, in which it is known as airway, breathing, and circulation po. And then what I did was, first is to check our tatay's airway, where in fact, hindi natin alam po na kumain siya firstly prior to the incident. So what I did was to check if he is eating something or something was stuck on his mouth or throat. So I checked it first to check if the airway is obstructed, and the next is for the breathing kasi kapag hindi po natin chinek yung airway ng ating pasyente or client or si tatay specifically, magiging problema po ito sa kanyang paghinga. So, next, after checking our airway, at tapos okay din yung breathing niya kasi wala naman siyang kinain or walang na-obstruct sa kanyang throat. So, next is, ang ginawa ko po nun is in-elevate yung kanyang paa at saka in-assist yung ulo niya to to what do you call this, to help tatay to have comfort while lying on the ground. So that's elevating his feet and then supporting his head is to make sure that the circulation of the blood will be normal the entire time na nagpo-first aid po ako noon. And it was on Friday, April 28 around 2 p.m. in the afternoon, which is the heat is very scorching that time po.
Okay, how many minutes did it take till he was able to get help? Na dala po ba siya sa ospital? Kamusta siya ngayon?
I guess that was like 1 hour almost po nung nag-aid po ako sa kanya, and then at then po nag-conscious na po siya, nag-normal na po yung mga vital signs niya. Hindi po siya nagpadala ng hospital po.
Okay, may tanong lang
For
ako,
maybe
kasi,
because of financial reason.
dito sa sa litrato, parang I think kasi when we encounter heat strokes and when we see it, usually lumalayo tayo eh. I mean, give the person some space.
Some air. Give him
Diba?
some air.
Oh, can you give us some guidelines apart from the airway, breathing, and circulation? Pag kami nakakita ng kaibigan namin na heat stroke, ano ba dapat namin gawin? Lalapitan ba namin? Lalayo kami? Ano ba dapat talaga?
Lalagyan ba namin ng tubig? Bubuhusan ba ng tubig?
Oo,
Lalagyan
yan.
ng bimpong basa? Any quick first aid tips for us, Julia?
Yeah, it could be po. Yung mga sinabi niyo po ay sakto po na gagawin, but you cannot let him or the patient or suffering from his heat stroke drink water immediately po. Same kay tatay, hindi ko po siya pinainom agad ng tubig kasi po nagsi-seizure po siya eh. Baka po mag-obstruct yun o magiging dahilan po yun na hindi po siya makahinga ng maayos po. Kaya right after tapos ko na po siyang i-aid, tapos papauwi na po kami dahil sabi nga ni tatay po, ayaw niya po magpapunta ng ospital. Kaya ang ginawa ko, sinabihan ko na lang yung kaibigan niya na to let tatay drink water, but not cold. 15 minutes after kaming nawala dun sa area po.
All right, Julia. Again, thank you so much for showing
Napakagaling
everyone
yan, napakagaling.
na kung anong dapat natin gawin. Tumulong lang tayo. Kung hindi niyo kaya tumulong, tumawag kayo sa someone na pwedeng tumulong.
Yeah.
Again, thank you for your kindness and for paying it forward. Thank you so much also for joining us tonight, Cebu nursing student Julia Baguio. And due to the impending El Nino, San Juan City Mayor and Metro Manila Council President Francis Zamora said that there will be no more traditional basaan or dousing of water in this year's Wata Wata Festival. This is part of the local government's efforts to conserve water to head off the looming water crisis. Mayor Zamora noted, though, that San Juan City will still celebrate the festival on June 24 in ways that will also show residents the importance of saving up water. The LGU will also parade the image of San Juan Bautista to bless the residents. The Metro Manila Council, meanwhile, is forming a task force that will help local governments in the capital region to craft ordinances aimed at water conservation.
Kasi nga sa pinag-usapan kanina with the Office of Civil Defense at ganoon din po sa MWSS, of course in coordination with the MMDA, tayo po ay magbubuo ng mga task force kung saan sila po ay magbibigay ng rekomendasyon sa amin. Ano ba sa tingin nila ang mga establishmento na dapat i-regulate? At yan po ay aming papag-aralan upang makagawa kami ng mga local ordinances namin.
Dapat yata dagdagan ng no Wata Wata Festival.
No wata.
No
Kasi
wata.
wala. Pero hindi na yata dapat sila celebrate. All right, after this next break, the 32nd Southeast Asian Games has officially opened. We'll get the latest on that with our One Sports correspondent, Paulo Del Rosario, who will be reporting to us live from Phnom Penh in Cambodia. Keep it here on One News.
Southeast Asian Games has officially begun, and we have lots to look forward to in the coming days. So with that, let's check in on Team Philippines with correspondent Paulo Del Rosario, who is reporting to us live from Phnom Penh. Paulo, kamusta dyan? How was the SEA Games opening ceremony?
Thank you very much, Gretchen, even though you did forget my name. But then you take a look at the stadium that we have here, the Morodok Stadium. It is an amazing occasion here so far. It's the first time the Cambodian nation is holding an event just like this. Everyone has been talking about the effort that they had to do to host an event of this scale. And so far, so good. The opening is still ongoing, and it is a show to be remembered for sure. It looks modern. It looks great. And as a fan here, as just a regular sports fan, a lot of people will be really excited for the games to come, Gretchen.
Kanina sinabi sa amin na hindi pala lahat pinayagan dyan sa venue. I mean, how are the preparations of Cambodia for the SEA Games? How are the athletes doing? The total condition, gaano kainit din dyan?
If we're gonna talk about the heat, I'm telling you right now, naka-jacket lang ako kasi indoors ako. You take a look at the preparations that Cambodians had for this particular event. Remember, there are no fees to get into any of the Cambodian events here in the Southeast Asian Games. So the security is tight, and they're trying to make sure that even though the tickets are free, it's a safe venue to enjoy the sports that we are all about to see. And of course, you take a look at the athletes that we've had here. All smiles so far. We were not allowed to go into the athletes' village itself. So instead, we met up with them in the NOC office, the Olympic Committee office, wherein we were able to get to talk to them right before the opening ceremony. And so far, everyone is excited to either continue their good run of form since the games have started a few days ago, or get started in their own games. Gretch, Sean?
Wow! Kanina, last natin nag-usap, 3 p.m. I was asking you, wow, how are the accommodations for the athletes, outside of the actual game arenas or stadiums? Have you finally seen where they're staying, and how are the facilities?
We've seen it from the outside, and so far, no complaints from the athletes themselves when we asked about it. They have been finding their own comfort being with each other, being with colleagues again, and seeing other countrymen able to represent the flag in the way that they do. At syempre naman, there'll always be nothing like home, but then with everyone around them here, it feels like they took a slice of home with them here in Cambodia.
I think we won already medals.
2 gold medals.
Yeah, in martial arts. And I think kanina binalita ni Cheska, nanalo din tayo sa OCR. What should we look forward to tomorrow? I mean, the first day, ano ba yung mga sports that will kick off?
Well, absolutely. So it's really impressive that nanalo tayo sa traditional Cambodian martial arts here in terms of gold medals. In fact, we also have silvers there. We also have an obstacle course already in the bag because it's all Filipino final tomorrow. So a lot of sports to watch out for. There's also aquatics, boxing will start out their preliminaries, and jiu-jitsu as well, which could be a medal event. Women's football resumes, and basketball 3x3 will start for both men and women. So a lot to watch out for, and you can follow all the correspondents here in Cambodia to get up-to-date reports on everything happening, because there will be a lot happening in a very short amount of time.
It's just the first day. We're very excited for all of you there. Please do cheer for us, for Team Philippines. Thank you so much for those updates. Paulo Del Rosario reporting to us live from Cambodia, site of the 32nd Southeast Asian Games.
Also tomorrow, not in Cambodia, we will be seeing King Charles III formally crowned as the head of the British monarchy. Royal preparations are already everywhere around the United Kingdom, including in this Filipino restaurant. The Casa and Kid restaurant in London is serving, for a limited time, its Carination chicken. Di ako barok Carination talaga yan. So this royal take on chicken curry is priced at 21 pounds or about 1,500 pesos. And as reported, President Marcos will be in attendance. Marcos Jr. said he was supposed to meet with King Charles, but because of his short stay in the UK, this will have to be rescheduled to a later date. President Marcos says he will try to speak to British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, as well as other world leaders on the sidelines of the coronation.
Makikipag-usap ako, siyempre sa Prime Minister Sunak. Pero habang siguro nag-aantay dun sa actual na seremonya ng pag coronation sa kay King Charles. So ganun na lang, it has to be very casual dahil everybody has to follow the very heavy schedule.
The ceremonial parade is actually kicking off at 10:20 a.m. London time, 5:20 p.m.
5:20
here. So 6 p.m. They will arrive, and then the coronation will be at 7 p.m. So we will be live by 6:45 on TV5 to witness the actual coronation.
And
But
here on One News at 7 p.m. also. So again, you're going to watch this. It's going to be so exciting. First coronation of a UK monarch in our lifetime. But that's it for the show tonight. We are One News, all sides, all the time.
it's the weekend,
Yes,
finally.
it is.
But we got a lot happening over. Watch out for the news. Thank you so much. This has been The Big Story. Good night.